Good morning, everybody. This is Dianne Kelley with Sandbrook Group coming to you out of Tucson, Arizona. And we are offering today the top 10 HR pitfalls. Over the years and working with small and medium businesses, we have found that many times they don't have a full-time or even part-time HR person on staff. Maybe it's the office manager, the business manager, even the CFO who's managing things. And from time to time, these questions come up and they don't know what they don't know. And sometimes it can cause a lot of problems and they can get into a lot of trouble. So we feel as a benefits broker that it's really important to tie in HR and make sure our clients and prospective clients are educated on where to go when you do have an issue, and also to head them off at the pass. So today we're going to offer the top 10 HR pitfalls offered to you by Denise Combs and Laura Sammel from Combs Consulting. So without any further ado, kick it off to Laura Sammel.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Laura McAndrews Sammel, and I am the principal consultant at Combs Consulting Group. I have about 20 years experience as a human resources professional, and I have my professional human resources certification from the Human Resources Certification Institute, in addition to my master's in business administration. So enough about the credentials. I just want to let you know that I know what I know. So anyway, I am here to present to you the top 10 human resources pitfalls that we see and how to avoid them, because often these are easy fixes. And I just want to kind of share with you a little bit about why I do what I do every day. And I would say that at Combs Consulting Group, we want to support leaders in building successful businesses, because we know that that creates thriving communities, stronger economies, more jobs, more fulfilled citizens, and abundance. And that's really what this is all about. We want everybody to succeed, because when one business succeeds, then another one and another one and another one. We just happen to have rock star level expertise in human resources management. So with that, we coach businesses, and usually small to medium sized businesses. These are the folks that have that really can't justify a full-time HR professional on their staff, but often need one regardless. We want to keep you out of trouble. We want to keep you from paying fines. We want to keep you out of court. That is what we do. Now, how do we do that? Well, we partner with employers to provide human resources management, business education, and leadership coaching services so that these businesses can attract and retain a skilled and engaged workforce. That's what it's all about. So, top 10 pitfalls, what the heck is that? Well, let me tell you how we came up with this. First of all, we started seeing in our clients trends. These were real life situations, and this is not just one business. This is usually something that we start seeing over and over and over again. These are things that can be easily corrected. They have the greatest risks to your business, and often business owners and leaders are simply not aware or don't fully understand. For example, I have one client who was telling me about the way she was compensating one of her employees, and she said, well, you know, my daughter works for the local county government, and they're able to do that. Well, what she didn't know was in public government, sometimes they have different rules than those of us in the private sector do. So it's those types of things, very easy to adjust. So we approach the top 10 pitfalls with confidence. We can help you do this. First of all, we take a look at mandated compliance, right? What are the things that we can fix that really we have to comply with because of the law? Then we take a look at risk management. We take a look at how, what exposure your business has to the risk with certain things. There might be certain things that maybe are not against the law at all, but maybe there could possibly be a perception that maybe you're not doing something correctly. And then finally, we go with best practices. And best practices are those things that it's like, you know what, these are tried, these are true methods. We know that these things work, and we are going to make it so that you can build these strong practices in your own business. Now, we take these three categories, and we also look at something that we call the 6 pillars of human resources management. And this is something that is just sort of the real basis, sort of our secret sauce of how we help businesses with human resources management. And we take a look at your business as, the illustration of a building. And we think about the foundation of your business, right? Isn't that your team? We need our team to run our businesses. We need the phones answered. We need folks to help us with our books. We need folks to help us with our IT. Even if you don't have employees, you have a team, right? And with that team, we use pillars. So just to illustrate, the different components of human resources. So if we think about the 3 categories I just spoke of and think about mandated compliance, and those are the first 2 pillars where we talk about employment law and compliance and safety and injury prevention, right? That little OSHA, right? Every state has its OSHA. In California, where we're based, it's Cal OSHA. I know California has employment laws that are pretty pumped up from a lot of the rest of the country, but there are plenty of other states out there, Pennsylvania, New York, other states that also have a very high level of employee-friendly HR laws. Then we take a look at that risk management, right? What are we going to do to reduce exposure to risk? And that is when we take a look at performance management and recognition and pay and benefits. Now, of course, there are going to be compliance issues surrounding pay. For example, we all have to pay at least minimum wage, right? We have to comply with the COBRA laws. We have to comply with things like that. But it's not required, for example, to write a job description for everybody. You don't have to do that. But would that be a good way to kind of reduce some risk to your organization if you have somebody maybe that is not physically able to perform the duties of a particular job? So those are the kinds of things we look at. And then finally, with best practices, we take a look, growth and development is huge. What about the succession plan in your business? How are you grooming people for the future of your business? And I always put recruitment at the end, because once all of these other pillars are nice and strong, that is when you put a job posting out there, people see your business pop up on Indeed and they get really excited, because now your company has a great reputation for those human resources management functions. And when all 6 of those pillars are nice and strong, it holds up the roof of your business, which is your workplace culture. That is what is going to keep people with their hearts beating a little bit faster, getting up in the morning and super excited to come and help your business be successful. So that is the 6 pillars of human resources management. So today, we're going to focus on a few different pillars: pay, workplace safety, performance management. These are the things that we see as some of the recurring trends and common mistakes that all of our clients make. So let's just get this party started, shall we? We're going to start with pitfall number 1, which is employment classification. A lot of times we have clients that say, I'm just going to have them be an independent contractor so I don't have to pay them overtime. Or I'm just going to have them salaried so I don't have to pay them overtime. If you are deciding on a pay structure to avoid paying overtime, please rethink it. Get some professional help from an employment law attorney or human resources professional. If you're classifying your people as salaried or as a contractor, check out your laws. In the state of California, for example, you cannot be salaried unless you're paying at least twice the minimum wage. And that is huge. And you can only be exempt, even according to the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1939, you still can only be considered exempt and that's a federal law, based on the duties of your job. And it's usually like management and policy making and decision making and that kind of thing. So be very careful about who you are classifying as exempt. Also, independent contractors. Now in California, we have this crazy ABC test that is, Assembly Bill 5 has just kind of, it's crazy. But even in the rest of the United States, we still have something called the Borrello test. There still is something that you need to look at to make sure that people are actually qualified to be independent contractors. So please be careful. This is a super, super common one. Always the first mistake I see in our clients. Second, we always talk about an employee handbook. Interestingly, an employee handbook is not required. Did you know that? But what we do see is that often businesses they'll say, oh, well, I had one client, for example, tiny little company, and she rented a space at a company that was much larger with more than 50 employees. And so she was friends with the manager of that other company, and they shared their employee handbook with her. And she's like, you know what, I'm just going to go through this and change the company names, and there, I've got an employee handbook done. Oh, but that company was so much bigger, and she was forcing herself to comply with laws that she was not obligated to comply with because she was so small. So do not use an employee handbook as a template for your company. Industries are different, company sizes are different. We want to be sure the states are different. Sometimes counties are different. In California, holy cow, we have municipalities that are different. You have to be careful. Also, you do want to create an employee handbook as a guidance. While an employee handbook in and of itself is not required, often there are certain policies that are required. So in California, and I know in probably at least 6 or 7 other states, there actually is a requirement about having a policy about the company's position on unlawful harassment, for example, and sexual harassment and unlawful discrimination. Well, if that's required, and for the states where that's not required, believe me, it's probably coming down the pike. So check it out. Make sure that you're complying. And it's not a bad idea to just use that employee handbook as a way to communicate with your employees. And it's also a good way to make sure that you're following the rules consistently for every employee. So that if, your favorite employee comes to you and asks for time off, and you go, oh, of course, yeah, take all the time off you want. And then another employee comes over that you kind of feel is kind of a pain in the neck, and then you don't give them the time off because you feel like they haven't earned it. Well, that's probably not a good practice, and that's probably something that is going to make that employee feel like they're getting picked on and that you're playing favorites and that kind of thing. Well, if you have it in your handbook what the vacation policy is, then there's no question you're being fair, you're being consistent, and that's the name of the game, folks. Okay, our next one, another employment law. Harassment prevention training. This is a big one. So this is required in several states, in California, in New York. I think there's a couple of Midwestern states. I can look it up if you have any questions about that, about specific states. But the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and this is a federal agency, has seen a huge spike in harassment and discrimination claims over the last 2 years. And we can see, I actually actually have a chart that I use in a different class that shows that in 2010, they had almost 8,000 claims in 1 year. And then it went, the whole graph goes down, 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 down. And then the Me Too movement happened and it shot back up again. It's on everybody's mind. And employees need to be supported when they make these claims. Now, they can go to the EEOC and make their claim, or you can make it so that they can come to you and make that claim. And that's what the policy does. The policy opens it up to have your employees go to you to make the complaint, to give you the opportunity to make it right. So have a clear policy and follow it. Regardless of what your state's law is, this really is a best practice. Now, interestingly, a lot of what the anti-discrimination, laws are in this company are actually covered in Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In California, we have more laws even on top of that, and we have another state agency. There are a number of other states that have state agencies that that cover, discrimination and sexual harassment claims. But really what this does is it prohibits discrimination based on a variety of protected classes. So when the Civil Rights Act first started in 1964, that was protection for people, based on their color, creed, or national origin. Later, they added gender to that, and then later they, and it just keeps going on and on. So what are those protected classes? It's women, it's, folks with different sexual orientations, with different gender expressions and that kind of thing. They keep amending it. The Congress keeps amending it and amending it. So it's one of those things where you have to just sort of keep your finger on that pulse, right? We want to not only avoid discrimination, but as I mentioned before, avoid the perception of discrimination, because let's face it, folks, it's not necessarily an employee that has been wronged that is going to litigate. It is an employee that feels hurt and angry that is going to litigate. And once that hurt and angry person litigates, the onus is on you to prove that it didn't happen. So I want to protect everybody from having that happen. Please consider, having that anti-discrimination policy and complying with that federal law of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. All right, we're going to move on to pay and benefits. This is kind of a key thing, vacation accruals. There's no rule that says you have to offer your employees paid vacation. Absolutely not. You don't ever have to give them time off. However, it's probably a good idea that you do. I certainly would consider that a best practice. And in many states, for vacation accruals, you don't have to offer it, but if you do, there are some rules about how you must manage that. If you will pardon me just a moment. A little sip of coffee, which I consider my public service. So in California, the use it or lose it of your vacation is actually illegal. In California and in a handful of other states, accrued vacation is considered vested wages. So those are earned wages that people have coming to them. What you can do in those cases often is, instead of saying, well, you get a week's vacation this year, and if you don't use it, then it's just going to go away. What you can say is you can accrue up to a week of vacation. And once you accrue that week, it's sitting there for you, it's ready for you, and you'll be able to accrue more once you use some of that vacation time. So that's one way to, to work with that. And, that's what I want to say. A good HR professional is going to help you follow the rules. They're going to help you work with the rules and figure out how to make it work. What drives me nuts with some HR professionals is sometimes they sit in their office with their arms folded across their chest, saying no to everything that you want to do. And I say, find an HR professional that will help you get creative and work with some of these rules in a way that helps you run your business. That is just one of my biggest philosophies. Sometimes you're not allowed to do something. Sometimes that's just the case. But if we want to figure out what the end accomplishment, what you want the outcome to be, and we will, a good HR person is going to help you get there. As far as vacation accruals, going back, sorry, I was on my little soapbox for a second there. You want to clearly define your guidelines for approval and use of vacation time. So you don't want somebody calling you up that morning and going, I think I'm going to use a day of my vacation today. That's not okay. You have plans in your business. It's okay for you to say, no, that's not approved. You have to run your business. Now, sometimes if there's some weird thing happening or, people get a flat tire on the way to work sometimes, that's fine. But, you do have the right to schedule that vacation at a time that is convenient for your business. And you want to treat those vacation hours as protected time. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I, many years ago, worked with a manager at a company where I was the HR director. And she came to me and told me that an employee was misusing the time off policy. And she wanted to write this employee up for absenteeism. And I'm like, oh, that's, okay, well, let me check it out. So I printed out the employee's, attendance and her timesheets and stuff. And I compared that to the approved PTO requests that I had in a binder in my office. And I just looked it up. And it turned out that this woman, in 6 months had one day that she called in sick, unscheduled, and all the rest of the time off that she had was approved by this very manager that wanted to write her up for misusing the absent policy. And so I spoke with the manager and I reminded her that if she could not spare this employee on all of these days, then it was okay for her to deny the request or work something else out with the employee. So we were able, can this relationship be saved? And yes, it was. I'm happy to report everything was fine. But it just goes to show that sometimes all you need to do is have a conversation with somebody. We have a tendency, I think, sometimes to jump to conclusions about what we think people are doing and why we think people are doing that. And really, all we have to do is sit down and ask them what's going on. And I think that's, often that's the answer to 80% of the HR issues that we have come up. All right, another pay and benefits. You see this? This is a big bowl of alphabet soup. And so we want to talk about protected leaves of absence. This used to not be such an issue, for small employers. Because often the protected leaves of absence didn't start for employers unless they had 50 or more employees. And that is the case. And here you'll see the FMLA, the CFRA, the PDL, the EFML, the FFCRA, the Family Medical Leave Act, the California Family Rights Act, the Pregnancy Disability Leave Act, the Emergency Family Leave Act from the Families First Coronavirus Act. It is all alphabet soup. And that was on my HR certification test, just so you know. And so different entitlements apply to different states and companies. And we know that the coronavirus, right, and all these special things that have happened because of the pandemic have really changed the landscape of this. So it's interesting to note that the Family Medical Leave Act applies to employers with 50 or more employees, but in California, the California Family Rights Act applies to employers with 5 or more employees. The Pregnancy Disability Leave Act, which is a federal law, applies to employers with 5 or more employees. the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act applied to everybody with 500 or fewer employees. So this is huge. This applies to everybody, and we need to make sure that we're complying and giving people the entitlements that we are obligated to provide. And so job protection means that when somebody goes on leave, and the pregnancy disability leave, I'll just give you that. You hire somebody, they show up on their first day, and they let you know that they're 5 months pregnant and that they're going to need a leave of absence. And if you have 5 or more employees, you have to give them that leave of absence when for pregnancy disability. So that's pregnancy and childbirth related disabilities of up to 16 weeks. And you have to provide them that leave. And by protected, I mean, you have to save their job for them. You have to have their job waiting for them, or at least a similar job with the same or better pay. So these are very, very important things. Please, folks, if this comes up, talk to an employment law attorney, get an HR professional. Do not make these decisions on your own. I know of one employer that, I think I'm going to tell this story later, but I'll tell it now. One employer who did not provide a protected leave for an employee, and she ended up getting taken to court and ended up paying $120,000. And that was directly out of her company's bottom line. And to be honest, when she told me this story, I said, you got off easy, because I've seen it come out much, much worse. So please, please, please seek professional advice. You're seeing a common thread in some of these? Now, here's something that has come up with the pandemic. And I think that this is going to completely change the landscape of how we work. It's going to change the landscape of our workforce, and that is remote workers. Telecommuting started to become a thing with the internet and all of that, like maybe in the 90s or so. But right now, it has become the new normal, right? We have people, I have clients suddenly since the pandemic that are hiring talent in other states because, a CPA firm, for example, has a hard time finding a CPA that can do tax preparation and that kind of thing. So you hire somebody in another state, and all you have to do is teach them some of the California stuff, and you're good to go, and it hums right along. So there are some things to keep in mind when this happens. First of all, you need to make sure that remote workers have access to the required postings. So every state has these. First of all, there's a whole bunch of federal postings that we need to tell people about, what their rights are, about their pay, and about different, polygraph tests and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then in each state, and then sometimes in each municipality. So we need to make sure that somehow those postings are available. You can either just mail them a poster, and maybe they can, hang it up as art in their living room or something, or make them available electronically. You also want to be sure that you're providing equipment that you're required to provide, and that you are providing workers' compensation. Now, this is kind of a big one, because somebody working in their home office, here I am in my home office right now. If I get up and I trip over a cord in my very own home office and injure myself, I guess that could be a workers' comp injury. I personally would not consider that so, but some employees would report that as such. And that is a risk to your company. So you want to be sure that people have the equipment they need, that, they have a nice ergonomic chair, that they have the screen, all of that stuff, so that they're not at risk for some sort of cumulative trauma or repetitive use injury. And also, you need to make sure most states will require you to have a tax identification number in a state where you have workers from their state. So Indiana was one of those states. We have a client with an employee in Indiana, and they had to get the tax ID number for Indiana for their company, and they had to pay payroll taxes to Indiana for that employee. So very important to note. It sounds pretty cool to have remote workers, and actually it kind of is, but it's not always as easy as it sounds, and you can't, get out of paying payroll taxes in your state without, often having to do that in another state. So just keep that in mind when you're considering a remote workforce. Oh, number 8. Yes, here we go. Workplace safety and all things COVID-19. Oh my goodness, in California, our governor just signed an executive order about some safety precautions that employers are going to have to take now that our state has been completely reopened. I know a lot of you are in states that have been reopened for months and months now. So you definitely just want to stay kind of tuned in on what is happening in your state. In California, and actually I would consider as a best practice anywhere, we need to have an injury and illness prevention plan. And that is essentially a plan where you write out, how you train your employees, how you do your record keeping, that kind of thing. You write out a little, fire prevention plan, a hazard communications plan. It can be quite a short document if you have, if your industry is basically just an office environment, and it can get a little bit more and more as, depending on your industry. We just wrote one for an auto mechanic, for example, and it was considerably longer because they deal with a lot more hazardous materials. In California, and I suspect in many other states as well, and actually as a best practice, we are actually required to have a COVID-19 response plan. When COVID-19 first started, we actually wrote a response plan for our clients that already had IIPPs that we had designed for them, and we called it the infectious disease response plan, because in actuality, some of the components of the COVID-19 stuff was actually a best practice for any kind of infection prevention. So you might consider having a COVID-19 response plan. The landscape of COVID-19, we don't know what's going to happen, winter months and all of that. Summer is probably the safest time, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully this is the end of it. That would be great. But we just want to keep our finger on the pulse and you just be aware of what's happening around us. Here's a big one, and I know some states are doing great. It's interesting. I was in Utah several weeks ago, and in Utah, nobody's wearing masks. Nobody's, doing any kind of, or very little, social distancing and dining indoors and the whole deal. And I was talking with somebody when I was there, and he said that 80% of their population is vaccinated. Well, that's way more than we have here in California. And the big question that I hear from a lot of my clients is, do I have to require vaccinations? The short answer is no, you don't have to. But the EEOC has ruled, and remember, the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission is a federal agency, and they have ruled that employers may indeed require vaccinations. Now, for those of us in the healthcare industry, and I worked in healthcare for probably 15-ish years, something like that, sometimes as an HR professional, as an operator, that type of stuff. This is not new. I was required to get a flu vaccine for years. And if I didn't get the flu vaccine, then I had to wear a mask from mid-November until mid-April. So, so you can absolutely require vaccines, but I really, 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 strongly recommend that you proceed with caution. First of all, there's a lot of people have very, very strong opinions about the vaccines, and I hate to be in a position to force somebody to do something they don't want to do. Okay. And also, and I'll give you an example. I have a dear friend who is fairly young and pretty healthy, and she got her COVID-19 vaccine, her second shot, and it landed her in the ICU for 3 days. Now, I'm happy to report she's fine, everything is fine, but that was a 3-day stay in the ICU. Now, if her employer had mandated that vaccine, that would have been a workers' compensation claim. And because she was hospitalized, it would have been a required phone call to Cal OSHA saying, "Hi, Cal OSHA. We have a work-related illness that landed our employee in the hospital. That is required within 24 hours of hospitalization due to a work-related illness or injury." And that is essentially an open invitation. Dear OSHA, please send one of your inspectors to my facility as soon as possible. Would you please? So we want to avoid that, right? So use your best judgment. In California, we have some guidelines, as I mentioned in that executive order that was just signed this week. So we now have some guidelines about, vaccinated versus unvaccinated folks, and the types of things that we need to do to protect our workforce and our customers. So, and that's really what this is all about. Okay, I think I'm ready for number 10, drum roll. So performance management, this is a big one. And this to me is the most important way to recognize your high performers, to recognize the contributions that your highest performers give to your company, is to address the low performers. Now, do you remember when I said sometimes you just need to have conversation with somebody? Well, that is true. You want your high performers to stay, and when they see the poor behavior and the poor performance of the low performers being tolerated, nothing stresses them out more, right? Have you ever been in that situation where you're like, what the heck is going on? And so when I have a leader come to me and say, well, so-and-so is a really, really great mechanic, but I want to put a bookmark on that but, because what that is going to tell me is so-and-so might have great skills as a mechanic. They know how to, figure out what's wrong with a car and fix it and all of that. What comes after the but is usually the behaviors that are not good, right? So those are usually, so-and-so is a great mechanic, but he has a bad temper, or, oh, that's just so-and-so, they're just blah, blah, blah. And what I want to say is set expectations. Let people know what the behavioral standards of your company are, and put it in your employee handbook. Put it in your job descriptions. Let people know what the expectations are. Does your company have values? If you have a mission statement and you have a vision statement, get some values. And the values essentially are the behaviors that everybody in your company agree to exhibit to carry out the mission and the vision. And so we want things on that values list to be things like, we work together as a team. We treat each other and our customers with the utmost respect and kindness. We provide service excellence to everybody in our midst, and we consider not just our customers to be our customers, but each other in our team, we are each other's customers too. So set those expectations, and that right there is going to be how you set your workplace culture. Because remember, your company reputation is at stake here. Your employees work for you. Yes, they work for pay, of course, but they could work for any of your competitors for pay too. So they're also working for you. It's the experience beyond the paycheck. And I will tell you that I'll never forget, years ago, I was working in healthcare. I was an HR manager for an outpatient clinic. And one of our medical assistants accepted a position at another clinic at a competitor, and they were going to pay her like something like $4 or $5 an hour more to do that work. And I was really sad to lose her. She was a really good medical assistant. So, but you know, I could not match that wage. There was just no way. So I had to let her go. About 5 months later, she called me up and she was crying. She said, "You know what, Laura, I can't stand this job. The money is great, but all I get to do is room patients. And you know what I miss is I miss the doctor's trust in my ability to provide care to the patients. I used to be able to, when I worked for your clinic, I used to be able to touch the patients and give them injections and help the doctor with the examination. And I don't get to do that here. All I get to do is room patients and write down the chief complaint in the file." So with that, I was able to bring her back into the company. I did give her a little bit of a raise because she did get some experience out there, and I was able to justify it. And she, I believe, is still working. I think she's a manager at that company now. But so again, it's not just the paycheck. People are working for the experience, for the fulfillment that that job gives in their lives. And remember, that fulfillment is going to trickle in, right? So when somebody is satisfied with their job and they go home after a long day, their family feels that satisfaction. And then when the kid sees the mom or the dad come home fulfilled, they're like, "I want that from my job." And then they're able to do something like that. And it just ripples into communities and into the world. So provide that experience for your folks. Help them with that. Also remember that your leaders are huge to your company. And there was a Gallup poll that was done that 75% of workers in our country that voluntarily quit a job do so because of their boss. That's huge. So 75% of the people that quit because of their boss, and that boss is your employee, your manager, your supervisor, whatever it is, that is completely preventable. Now I always try to recognize that sometimes turnover is good turnover. There is such a thing as positive turnover, absolutely. But if you can prevent the leakage of really top quality talent from your company, please do. Keep an eye, just keep a finger on the pulse of the leaders of your company. Make sure that they understand what your philosophy is on how people should be treated and how the policies of your company should be carried out. Because word gets out in your communities, word gets out there, and we want to make sure that the word is positive. So what are your next steps? So consider this. First of all, if you don't have an employee handbook, get one. And if you do have an employee handbook, you definitely want to make sure that it's updated. Laws change, things change. So I would suggest at least every 2 years, have an HR professional or employment law attorney review your employee handbook just to make sure it's up to date. You also want to audit your pay practices, ask questions, minimum wage, for example. In California, it's a moving target. I believe in Arizona, you guys are having some changes. I know that in many states, minimum wage is a huge thing. And sometimes when minimum wage changes, it also changes how you pay your other employees. And here's an example. Say somebody has been, working their tail off for you, and you just gave them a raise, you gave them a $1 an hour increase, your minimum wage, let's say your minimum wage is $11 an hour, and you raise them to $12 an hour. But then shortly after that happens, minimum wage raises to $12 an hour. Well, what do you do with that person you just gave the raise to? Do you keep them at what is now minimum wage, or do you recognize that behavior and give them an additional $1 an hour too? So it's those types of things that you want to keep in mind. What kind of workplace culture do you want? What can you afford? Sometimes you can only afford what you can afford, but anyway, keep that in mind. Make sure you have an updated safety plan. In California, we have very strict requirements, but I know that the OSHAs and in other states also have similar requirements. So be sure, what your state's requirement is, and be sure to comply with that. Keep your people safe. And also, you want to provide some kind of supervisory and or leadership training for your formal leaders and your informal leaders. Now, what the heck is that, Laura, an informal leader? That is somebody that maybe has been with your company for a long time, maybe isn't a supervisor, has no intention, no desire to be a supervisor, yet people see that person as a leader of the company regardless, because they just know stuff because they've been around for a long time. So keep an eye on that too, and just recognize those informal leaders, and make sure that they know how to report things or, divert situations and that kind of thing, so that if they're being a confidant to somebody, that they can help that somebody get their concern addressed. And finally, recognize your employees, recognize those high performers. You do that by addressing those low performers. Sometimes you can do that with, a handful of Starbucks cards, get them, have a big company lunch once a month or whatever it is. However, your employees, feel recognized. At some companies, at the auto mechanic I was talking about, they have a gas grill out in the back, and once a month everybody brings, hot dogs and hamburgers and potato salad, and they have, they take a long lunch and just have a little company picnic during the summer months. It's awesome. It's super fun. So do that. So remember, it's not always about the paycheck. We want to be consistent in our decision making because that prevents the perception that there's discrimination going on. We want to change this mindset that I often see small business owners do. And when I say small businesses, I don't mean that your business is small. I mean that you just have like maybe under 40 employees. And a lot of times I find that those business owners are like, oh, we're too small. That'll never happen to me. Yeah, that person I told you about that had the $120,000 fine because she didn't provide that protected leave, she only had 30 employees. So, you want to change that mindset and reach out. You are not alone. Certainly, I'm not the only HR consultant on the planet either. We're, a dime a dozen employment law attorneys. Please reach out, get some help, and do what you say you're going to do. So here at Combs Consulting Group, and again, there are plenty of other places, we bring peace of mind and confidence because you don't know what you don't know. Ask an employment law attorney. I know that I've said this at least 20 times today because all rules are not created equal. So, and I told you this story too about a company owner following the compensation rules for a public agency versus her business, which was in the private sector. So we just want to be careful of that. And I just wanted to sort of flip through here some of the different services that we offer here at Combs Consulting Group. Again, there are plenty of other HR companies out there. We just want to make sure that you are getting the service you need to keep your business operational, to keep your employees happy and satisfied and fulfilled. We want you to succeed. We want you to be a part of this great country and this great business environment that we live in. So what we want to do here at Combs Consulting Group is provide you with a free gift. So if you want to have a free discovery meeting with us, if you schedule that by this Friday, what we'll do is Denise and or I will sit down with you and we'll do a quick little HR assessment of your company and just sort of, and maybe even give you some action items for you that are customized for you, and that's totally free. No strings attached, no obligations for you. We want you to do that. We want you to do it so bad that we will give you not only a $25 Amazon gift card, but we also have this lovely little journal notebook that you can use to take notes during our meetings, so that you can remember everything, all the great little tidbits that we're able to offer you. And so with that, I say, not only can you get an HR assessment from us at Combs Consulting Group, but you can also get a benefits assessment from our very own Dianne Kelley at Sandbrook Group. So you can see the word group is in both of our business names because we have just a network of professionals available to help your business grow, to help your business succeed, and to help you attract and retain a skilled and engaged workforce. Thank you, everybody. My name is Laura Sammel. I'm with Combs Consulting Group, and I am so pleased to provide you with this information. I hope you found it useful. And it looks like maybe we have something in the chat here. Does anybody have any questions? Rebecca, has anybody asked any questions in the chat?
Yes, but I believe Dianne has raised her hand. Dianne,
Okay.
did you want to say something first?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Laura and Denise for bringing this to us today, because HR is something that is dictated by litigation and legislation and regulation. And if you don't know what's going on in your world, like she said, different states have different regulations, there are federal regulations. It's so critical that you know what applies to you. And it's a constantly moving train. And if you aren't on the right train, you might find yourself in trouble. So I really appreciate that. And COVID changed the whole landscape, did it not? I mean, we never had to worry about that kind of safety. Yeah, we were worried about trips and falls or other equipment issues, but never about disease safety. So this has brought a whole new level of concern to employers of how they bring employees back safely, what they do have to adhere to regulation-wise, federal, local, whatever's going on. So it's really, really important that you find out what is in your world to protect your employees and your business. We also work with other people with their commercial insurance, and many times it won't cover you against these claims. So you're out on your own. There's very limited coverage for HR violations. I can tell you again, story after story of clients I've talked to who maybe they had an employee, a trusted employee who was very sick and was off work for a long time. And because they're a benevolent employer, as many small and medium employers are, they treat their employees like family, which is great. But then they decide, I'll just continue to pay this employee while they're off work. Well, that's a violation. It's illegal, and you set a precedent, and you have some other problems coming down the pike for doing that. So just those tiny little things that are pitfalls. And I think it's really important that if you don't have a good consultant for HR, that you talk to one. And Laura and Denise have made this very available to you with their assessment. So I highly encourage you to do that. If you have any other questions on benefits, obviously we're happy to do that. We will do a benefit assessment for you. We'll tell you what is available out there. There's a lot of different ways to design your benefit program. And if you haven't had somebody take a second look at that, we're happy to do that. We also work here in Arizona largely with association health plans, which California doesn't have, so sorry. But we are working on putting together a national association plan for a bridal association nationally. So if you do have an association for your industry, then maybe we can put something together for you that's similar to you. So thank you for all of your input. And if there are any other questions, I know that Laura would be happy to address those.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. I think, a lot of times with businesses that have just a few employees, they kind of feel sometimes that medical insurance is outside of the scope of what they're able to afford for their folks. But I think it's important to note that even if you're not able to provide medical insurance, that there are other very low cost benefits that you can still offer to your employees that would provide that level of recognition and such until your business gets to the point where your cash flow could support that medical insurance. But I highly recommend that you speak to Dianne about that because I really believe that that benefits are something that, feels sometimes outside of what you can provide, but actually, if we get creative with it, just like a good HR person, a good benefits person is going to help you get creative. And I know in my heart that Dianne is one of those benefits consultants.
And that is so true. You don't have to put in a full-blown medical plan to get started. We can do a lot of other things. We're working right now on a branded program that is a telemed program that offers discounts on prescriptions. You get telemed for free, and it's $10 a month per employee. So no matter what you want to do, if you have a large employee count that maybe they're caregivers, that's a specific area where a lot of times they aren't eligible for the medical insurance. You can still offer this to them, and you can do it discriminatorily because it's not an ERISA plan.
Oh, interesting.
It's a discount program. So
interesting.
You can compensate your top performers by saying, we're going to pay for this provision for you, and you've got this coverage. So there are other things that you can also do discriminatorily that aren't under ERISA. So we are happy to look at those benefits. And like Laura said, we love getting creative and coming up with solutions to what you might perceive as your benefit issue. But in this market where employees are so desperately needed in so many different businesses, how are you going to attract and then retain those quality employees if you don't have something additional to offer to them? Like Laura said, it's not just all about pay. It's about the culture. It's about what else you're offering. It's about how you treat your employees. And, there's so many other things that we can offer on the table that are going to hold them to you.
Absolutely. Dianne, you're right. And it's something that I did not mention during my presentation, but is worth noting, which is this crazy labor shortage that we're facing in the country right now. And some people think that it might be because of, extra unemployment benefits that people are getting. But I also think that, the birth rate decrease in this country that we started to experience in 1972 we're starting to see that for the folks, the baby boomers that are retiring out of the workforce. And I think that COVID, kind of made people retire a little sooner maybe than they would have otherwise. And now suddenly we just don't have enough people to replace those folks. So there is a huge labor shortage right now. And you're right, to attract that top talent, we have to get creative. And we want to create a good benefits package, a great work environment, a great work experience. So I thank you so much for that. And we did have a question come in through the chat, and it says, we have an employee who worked outside of normal business hours. They did not get permission. Do we have to pay the employee for that day? So the short answer to that question is yes, you do have to pay the employee for that day. If they worked hours, I would say, always take the high road and pay. However, if you have an employee handbook that states that to work outside of normal business hours, they need to get supervisor approval, or to work overtime, they need to get supervisor approval. So they get the pay, but they also might get some discipline, right? So it's the whole thing of, okay, I have to pay you, but you violated one of our policies. So that is a conversation that you probably need to have with that person. And if it's just a one-time thing, I always feel like, sometimes people err in their judgment from time to time. I know I'm an HR lady, but I always like to remind folks that the H stands for human. And we all are human and sometimes make weird, crazy mistakes. And so we want to give people grace to be human. But if you start seeing a trend of where that's happening a lot, and that you might have some other little bit of a weird vibe going on, and you want to have that conversation. Let's see, another question. Does our owner have the legal right to tell our sales and service staff that they must make a certain number of calls per week to remain employed? Can we fire somebody for not following this rule? So the short answer to that is yes. Yes, you can make that rule, and yes, you can fire people. Again, it depends a little bit on your state. In California, we are an at-will employer, so that means that a person's employment relationship with us is at our will and at their will, so we can fire them at any time and they can leave at any time. There's no requirement to provide notice or anything like that. Some states are right to work states, and you want to be sure that you understand the difference if you're in a right to work state. But in at-will states, yes, you can set quotas, you can set parameters, you can set performance expectations. What you do want to make sure of is that it's reasonable. Are your expectations reasonable? Is it, you want to set your quota at a place where it's attainable and still a little bit challenging, right? And do you want to fire somebody for not following this rule? You probably want to have some kind of parameter in there that says, if you're not able to do this, for a certain period of time, or if you can't sustain it for whatever, I would just be a little bit more specific instead of just, firing people, that doesn't leave a good taste in anybody's mouth. But again, it depends on your workplace culture and the kind of environment that you're trying to create. So I hope that helps. I have another question. How long is the discovery call? I have a delicate HR issue that I want to use that time for. Is that okay? Yes, absolutely. I will be the first to say that I am not an employment law attorney. I cannot provide you with attorney-client privilege, but what I can do is let you know whether I think your situation should have an attorney. I know just when that place is where I'm like, whoa, you need to go talk to an attorney. But I would say that 98% of what we address at Combs Consulting, maybe 99% of what we address at Combs Consulting are sometimes, yes, they're delicate issues, but you would be surprised at how many times we have seen it happen. Whatever it is you have going on, chances are we have seen it happen, and it would not surprise us. It would not abhor us. It would not surprise us. So we can help you with that. And yes, we will give you 1 hour, and you can have that 1 hour to ask your questions if that's how you would like to spend that time. Absolutely. Okay, I think that's all we have. Is that right, Rebecca? We don't have anything else? Okay, folks, well, I just wanted to thank you once again. I am Laura Sammel with Combs Consulting Group, here to wish you a happy week, and we hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.